You're in the club. Kevin's in the club. How cool is it after all he's been through to see LaMarcus Aldridge score 20,000?
There was a time where they all called me like, yo, we about to pull up to Houston. Like, baby, Dirk, me. They all come to the house. They land at like 2 in the morning. I gotta go to practice in the morning. They come in the studio and I'm up with them the whole time. And I go right from the studio at 7:30 a.m. right to practice.
After 6 Hall of Fame co-stars, 2 of them twice, and 13 failed postseason runs, it might be safe to say James Harden is far from the same player in the playoffs as he is in the regular season. As the leader of the team, he's led one team to the conference finals, overshadowed by a mix of injury and meltdowns when teams finally have a chance to lock in on him for an entire series and experiment with different schemes to defend until something works. Few players have ever been able to continue being stars in those moments, and even less superstars. With the right team around said player, it usually ends in success. But as Harden elevated his regular season play to legendary levels year after year, broke records scoring and shooting, transcended the step-back 3, won an MVP, and even once had the league so confused on defense that players would have to guard him with their hands behind their backs, it's evident that he's not that player, and his style officially won't lead to a championship, with his new co-star, the clear leader of his current team, the Philadelphia 76ers, going into Harden's 33rd year in age. If his most recent season is any indication of what's to come in the future, it might just be that time to call James Harden washed. He's played 13 seasons in the NBA, making the playoffs every year. Early on, it was expected his young OKC core of he, Durant, and Westbrook would struggle to find their way, and even achieved a conference championship banner together in 2012, losing to the Miami Heat in the finals, with Harden scoring double digits in only 2 of the 5 games. He was then traded to the Houston Rockets after he and the Thunder couldn't agree to terms into a fresh situation. This time, he was finally the guy and thrusted into superstardom. His first 2 playoff seasons with the Rockets ended in first-round losses, with Harden averaging 26.3 points a game, shooting 39% from the field, and in 2013-14, 26.8 points a game, shooting 37% from the field. He's never shot at least 50% from the field in the playoffs. Not such an easy thing to do. In comparison, LeBron did it just 8 times in his GOAT conversation playoff career, and Kevin Durant just 4 times in his. I mention those guys because from 2017-18 to 2019-20, Harden was one of the best players ever in the regular season, usually compared to the best of his peers and of all time. But while they were off winning championships, Harden had yearly booked flights to Lil Baby's Summer Rolling Loud tour, missing his legendary mark based heavily on his stunted growth in the playoffs. Let's talk about it. Salute to Ebenezer John for this request. Appreciate you, my boy. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. You can also send a super thanks by clicking the button below. Enjoy the video. The James Harden playoff struggles began immediately as he, Kevin Durant, and Westbrook embarked on their first playoff journey together in 2010, losing in 6 games to the Lakers. James Harden scored 0 points in the first 2 games and went on to average 7 in the series. In 2012, the Thunder made it all the way to the finals in James's 6th Man of the Year winning campaign, but Harden struggled just enough to give LeBron his first championship ring, which may have been his easiest. Game 1, Durant 36, 8, and 4. Westbrook near triple-double 27, 8, and 11. Harden, fresh off averaging almost 17 points in the regular season, 5 points, 0 rebounds, and 3 assists. 3 of the 5 games, Harden failed to reach double digits as the young Thunder played their final game together. What would happen next was some of the best individual numbers we'd see in the league during the regular season by Harden over the next 8 years in Houston, including a season he averaged 36 points a game, most since Michael Jordan in 86-87, and more free throw attempts than Draymond Green averages in career points. But the Rockets lost in the second round to the Warriors for the 4th time in 5 years. In 2015, Game 4 of the conference finals against those Warriors, Harden scored a playoff-high 45 points, going 1-4 flat the entire game. His most recent struggle came this past postseason 21-22, where he and the team he left Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for lost in the second round to the Miami Heat, with Harden averaging a playoff low 18.6 points a game, shooting 40% from the field and only winning the 2 games Joel Embiid played in. Without him, Harden looked lost and disinterested, most of all, incapable. Why? Let's look at some of James Harden's playoff struggles and the biggest growth stunts that caused them. Stunt number 1, Harden's play style. The biggest and most obvious growth stunt to me in the playoffs for James Harden is the way he plays that hasn't and won't lead him to a championship. You've heard the term over-dribbling, pounding the air out of the ball. Well, these are 2 phrases James, I don't think, has ever heard, or is the biggest troll ever to actually cater a game style to do just those things. Before his star stages began in Houston, Harden was one of the better scorers off screens, handoffs, and cuts to the basket in OKC, which made him far less predictable than what he became later on. Over time, teams were able to hone in on that predictability and find ways to beat him with that style every time, easily if you ask me. In hindsight, I don't even understand why some thought the Gilbert Arenas 1-4 flat special would ever be anything more than exciting basketball in an era the three-point shot was at its peak. Game 4, 2015 Western Conference Finals is the best illustration. Harden goes off for 45 points, attempted 11 threes and made 7 in all 1-4 flat situations and 13 free throws. In a time you couldn't convince me the league wasn't doing everything to make a superstar in the Houston market. He followed that with arguably his worst playoff game in an elimination Game 5, scoring 14 points, committing a playoff record 12 turnovers, and going 2 for 11 in a game that meant his team goes home for good should they lose. In his final 6 elimination games with the Rockets, Harden has been abysmal. 23.8 points a game, 38% from the field, and 6.7 turnovers a game. Add that to his 2021 struggle in Brooklyn, first with an injury to his hamstring in Game 1 of the semifinals versus the Bucks. A series Harden averaged 10.8 points a game and shot 30% from the field and 19% from 3. In the elimination Game 7, he went 5 for 17 for 29% on field goals and 16% 2 for 12 from 3, throwing the ball all over the gym in clutch situations. He looked like a liability that series as his play style once again showed completely useless on that stage. He needs to get back to playing more off the ball and also maybe developing a post game to help him late in his career, where at 32-33 it already looks like he's at the end. Stunt number 2, limp in, limp out. A saying in the NBA of what will most likely happen to you during the course of an NBA season if you don't show up in proper shape. Come into the season hurt and hobbled, it's the same way you will probably go out, because no one gets more healthy during the season if they don't take proper time off from the court. Well, James Harden has set his body up to fail more than a few times when his team had the chance to be special because for whatever reason, he doesn't always show up to the season in the shape he should be to lead a team. In the 2021 season, he famously showed up disgruntled after a trade he's been seeking all summer failed to pan out. Not only that, he was obviously out of shape and not ready to play at the level he was capable. His trade finally happened January 14, 2021 to the Brooklyn Nets as he used the next few months to get into the shape he was supposed to have been in much sooner. Well, during the 21 playoff semifinals versus the Bucks, Harden, maybe pushing too hard to beat Giannis, whom have had words with each other before the matchup on multiple occasions, pulled his hamstring a minute into the game and missed the next 3 for the Nets. He returned Game 5 to add a dud of a game, scoring 5 points, 0 for 8 from 3, and 4 turnovers. The Nets were eliminated in Game 7, which they made due to Kevin Durant's heroics that series, fighting against one of the best players ever and a teammate in and out the lineup because he didn't do what it took to last the course of a full season. This season with the Sixers, not to give him an excuse, but Harden was clearly still struggling from the hamstring issues he was dealing with all season. He looked sadly below the basket and his first step was non-existent, leading to a disappointing 6-game second-round loss, mostly because James, especially in this stage of his career, isn't healthy at the end of the season. Too much partying and not taking care of his body off the court. Stunt number 3, not that guy. A culmination of all that leads to James just not being that guy. Like mentioned earlier, a few players have ever been the guy enough to lead their teams to championships as not only the guy for their team, but a superstar in the league as well. I think the NBA desperately wanted James to become a star in Houston, and for a while you couldn't touch James Harden, or he'd scream and holler, shrug his body, and get an immediate call to send him to the free throw line again. He's 6'5" and really a small forward playing a shooting guard that plays point guard, even though he's one of the worst in the league year after year in turnovers. He's had 8 seasons in Houston to prove he was that guy, and every time he's failed miserably in elimination games he should have showed up for. In his final 2 playoff seasons, Nets and Sixers, Harden has looked like a shell of himself, even like the team would be better off with him not in the game at all, as along with his play style, I've never seen someone make as many excuses when things go wrong like Harden during the game. It's never his fault, and that's also a characteristic of a guy who's probably not the guy. The guy takes the blame, the guy works endlessly, and is patient and ready when that chance comes again. The guy will succeed. The other guys will be at the functions. Harden is cool being the guy at the functions, rather than the guy in May and June. All in all, James Harden was a great player. But ultimately, I think his career will be overshadowed by his play in the playoffs. He has 0 championships and it's not looking good for him to win his first, with the Sixers likely taking a step back next season, with 2 leaders who for their own reasons and play styles, I don't see winning in this era unless teaming up with other stars. It feels almost deserving in a way because you never felt Harden put in the work to deserve success postseason and probably will end his career ringless and disappointing due to his playoff woes. For these 3 reasons, James Harden's growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.